Well, now we come to Cabot, Vermont, the place I always wanted to record but couldn't because there were no payphones that would let me use a pickup coil. Here's the earliest recording of the Cabot exchange from a 1971 compilation of rings and busy signals.
Continental Telephone, 802-563.
Here's the reorder tone from the early 70s. The original Cabot tone plant rang like this, which is not at all how it rang in 1975. And in 75, some new audio tones began appearing in the background. Here's the reorder tone from the early 70s. And here's 1975. Clearly, the rigging machine changed. Here are some microphone to the earpiece recordings from 1975 using the ringback first.
Here's what it sounds like to dial 9 something something and hang up. That was dialing 1, which makes it shoot over to terminal 11 because it's a coin phone. Next, dialing my own last 4 digits.
My own last 4 digits were 2753, except before 1975 the number posted on the phone was 5639953. The real number was 2753, but they screwed up big time because 99 has to go into the ringback circuit if dialed locally, which means that nobody in Cabot can call you back at that payphone. You could call into the payphone from long distance with 9953, but locally, there was no way that it could work. And the thing is, they could have made it 9753 and it would have worked fine. All they had to do was make the digit 9 absorb once. That would set it up to double the real 1000 group, which in Cabot is the 2000s, and there would be no problem at all. The published code for the ringback is 29. And that does not conflict with the payphone being 9 whatever, as long as you don't make it 99 hello. I don't know what it was with these guys. They didn't seem to understand how simple it is to make a coin 9000 group that is theoretical. It just doubles whatever your main 1000 group is. It's the 2s in Cabot, the 3s in Marshfield. Very simple, but they didn't do it. And by 1975, they had just given up and they published 2753 on the phone. Now later I discovered that they were planning to put the coin phones in the 8000 group, and I can't help but wonder if their previous mistake with the Cabot coin phone influenced that unwise decision. Anyway, the Cabot Central Office is able to support a 10-party line, and because of using distinct frequencies of ringing current, they can arrange it so that none of the 10 people's phones ever ring for any but their own calls. This is done by having 5 different kinds of bells, each of which only rings when the correct frequency is present, combined with wiring 5 of the bells between the side of the line called ring and ground, and the other 5 bells go between the other side of the line, called tip and ground. And that way you can have 10 distinct bells that don't ring for anybody else's calls. This makes the coded ringing that we saw in Plainfield unnecessary. One of the people on the road where my summer house was showed me a green index card that the phone company had typed up specifically for him. On the card was the name of everybody who lived up and down that road, and for each person there was a different code. Every code began with 291. 2912 for one person, 2913 for the other, 2914, and so on. The person who showed me the card was party number 1. The 29 would go into the ringback circuit. The 1 was to make his own phone ring so that he would know when the party he was alerting answered, and then the final digit corresponded to the person he was trying to alert. So he was to dial 291 whatever, hang up, and as soon as his phone stopped ringing, pick up because the other person has answered. Whoever was party number 2 got a card with 2921, 2923, 2924, etc. He also had an older card from the 1960s where all the codes began with 19 instead of 29. That card was from when they didn't yet have long-distance dialing, or they did have long-distance dialing but were using an odd prefix, such as 112. 112 was the toll access code in certain independents through the 1970s. Okay, back to the Cabot payphone. The only way to record phone calls was to put a microphone up to the earpiece, and that didn't make a very good recording. But that same dynamic microphone having a coil in it could be used to go down by the bell box and pick up the ring current. And since Cabot has 5 ring frequencies, that's made a reasonably interesting tape. The following recording is from 1972 or 73.
I'm at a Continental System office in Vermont, area 802563, where a very unusual party line system is used, 5 different ringing frequencies, and this can be done on the tip or the ring, which allows party lines up to 10 people to exist. In order to engage the ring back, we dial 9, and then the coded numbers of the frequencies and wires we need. For instance, if I want frequency 0 and frequency 5, I dial 905.
That's the ring current before 1975. After 1975, a 600 Hz audio tone had been added.
Zero and 5 are the slowest frequency, and they're the same frequency. The same with 1 and 6. That's what this phone rings on. Naturally, we can't record those frequencies.
1 and 6 is the regular 20 Hz frequency. I couldn't record it in the early 70s because my microphone was picking up the bell ringing too loudly. But in 75 I put a magnetic inductive coil down by the bell box and did get the signal. It's 20 Hz with a 1 kHz audio tone added.
Frequency 2 and 7. Now you can begin hearing the actual frequency of the ring other than just the tone.
Now that we're above 20 Hz, the ring current itself has a discernible pitch. At 20 Hz and lower, with the old ring machine, you did hear a tone, but that was right, not one of the loud new audio tones added to the ring frequencies in 1975. Here's the 1975 version of the ring used on 2 and 7. That ring frequency was something above 20 Hz. The audio tone was 1600.
Now, the frequency for 3 and 8.
The 1975 audio tone for this ring frequency is 2200.
And now 4-9.
The 1975 ringing machine added a 2700 Hz audio tone to this highest ring frequency.
This thing does ring for 1/2 second every second, alternating the two frequencies you have selected.
That was true of the early 70s ringback circuit. The 1975 version inserts a 1-second pause after every 4 ring bursts.
Of course, I've been using the same frequency and having it alternate ring and tip. Now I'm going to use 8 and 9. This would be the same frequencies as 3 and 4, except 3 and 4 are on one wire and 8 and 9 are on the other wire. Here's 8 and 9 alternating.
Here's the same thing in 1975.
I'm now going to alternate the slowest and the fastest. 5 and 9 I could also do with 0 and 4. Of course, all you hear is the artificial ringtone on the slower frequency.
For what follows, I probably dialed 907 for the slowest and the middle frequency. Here's frequency 0 and frequency 3 in 1975. Now frequencies 3 and 4. This ringback circuit normally does not provide the ticking tone to alert the called party line customer that a party line call is incoming. But one time in 1975, while I was at that payphone, it did. This is frequency 1 and frequency 4. There it was. But that happened on only one of the 10 ringback calls recorded in 1975. What follows is from the early 70s.
In this payphone system, you don't deposit your dime until supervision is heard. And when it supervises, your mouthpiece is cut off, and this is done with a little relay, which makes a lot of noise. So when you dial a supervision test, the phone itself clicks. And here it is. That's the actual sound of the phone clicking.
The Cabot Central Office is right on the main street in Cabot, slightly northeast of the General Store. And by the way, it's a bigger building now than it was in 1975. Anyway, one day in the summer of 1975, I saw an employee about to go into the CO, and I politely asked him if I could come in with him and see it, and he let me. I recorded some of the sounds of the switches, and at the beginning you can hear me asking, "Is this a regular phone?" It seemed like the office was pretty busy to start with, but once I picked up the phone, we can assume that a certain amount of the dialing you hear is me.
Is this a regular phone?
There's a sound we heard just a few seconds ago that I want to call your attention to. This. And here it is again. There are only two things I know of that could make that sound in the Cabot CO. What it probably is the ringback circuit doing one of its rare ticking tone events, which we heard inductively earlier. Another possibility, which I don't think is the case, is that that is an ANI sender, the thing that MFs the caller's number to the long-distance tandem. I do not think Cabot had that feature in 1975, but I don't know for sure. The final thing I recorded inside the Cabot CO was the ringback circuit. Here's the sound of the ringback circuit alternating two frequencies, each of which is sent down the ring side of the line. I was able to identify the relay that is associated with putting the signal on the ring side of the line that was operating with every impulse. And then I saw two other relays that were alternating back and forth, each of them associated with the particular frequencies I'd selected.
This is the one that puts it on the ring, I think. This one has to do with putting it on the ring rather than on the tip, right?
Oh, I can't remember. I haven't got certain.
I did ask the guy, what's up with these audio tones on all the various rings? And based on what he said, I made this comment once I got home.
The purpose of the audio tone is for differentiation of ring over carrier systems. But apparently they use RF supervision signaling, so I'm told. It's just the ring frequency that's done with an audio tone.
Now that actually makes total sense. You know, before the 70s there wasn't any subscriber line carrier to speak of. What I mean is that every single telephone subscriber had a pair of wires, unless he was on a party line, in which case up to 10 people shared the same pair of wires. Multiplexing subscriber lines really didn't start until the 1970s, and it was still a very tiny percentage of telephones. And the first time I ever encountered it was out in rural Virginia. C&P Telephone, the Bell Company, was using a system made by Anaconda Electric. It didn't have a large number of stations on it, maybe as few as 8. At every house that was on the carrier system, there was a little pedestal, and that little pedestal, if you put a pickup coil up to it, you would pick up a very loud 3700 Hz tone. Now in 1976, the office phone at the commune got converted from a terrible hummy wire line to a line that sounded like N1 carrier, without the howl. It was so much better, and I had a chance to record it and I didn't. I could kick myself. Now it sounded like N1 carrier, but N1 carrier uses wire pairs, while the Anaconda system uses coaxial. The only thing that I didn't like about it is that whenever there was an on-hook signal from the subscriber, the sound from the distant end would sort of fade in, so the dial tone would sort of fade in. You wouldn't hear the normal click. During the fade-in, the carrier noise was constant, but the distant noise would fade in. Just to give you an idea of the difference before and after, here's a section of narrated tape recorded at the commune before the carrier, and then I'll show you what it would have sounded like had I done it on the Anaconda line. Now my narration is local carbon mic, so it's going to sound like hell either way, but notice how hummy the line is.
So, I've just dialed 4, by the way. On selector 4, 1 is A, comma, DA. Dialing 4-2. Yuck.
That's an awfully hummy line, but the same thing on Anaconda carrier would have sounded like this.
So, I've just dialed 4, by the way. On selector 4, 1 is A, comma, DA. Dialing 4-2. Yuck.
That was a handcrafted composite from my memory, and as I listen to it now, I'm like, oh, I did record it. But no, I didn't. Now, whatever system they're using in Cabot is more advanced because it uses RF for supervision. No need for the 3700 there, but it does use audio tones for the ring. Now, here's the question that I've got. Whatever it is that picks up the audio tones, what does it convert the audio tone to? You could have a little box at each person's house that picks up the tone and lets their phone ring 20 hertz, but only when their particular tone frequency sounds. Otherwise, everything could be in the same box as what decodes the signal, and they could still be using the old-fashioned ring frequencies. That is something I didn't think to ask. There were some subscriber line carriers that were T-carrier, but that's pretty much all I know about subscriber line carrier. So here's the timeline with regard to the Cabot payphone, the only payphone in town. I first encountered it in either 1970 or 71. The number was 563-9953. I wasn't making a lot of recordings then, but I couldn't have made a good one because it had that independent coin phone with no electromagnetic signal. I also discovered quickly that the number could not be dialed from within the Cabot exchange, and if you tried, you would just end up going into the ringback circuit and getting nothing. When I made my first set of recordings in 1972 or 3, I apparently had not figured out that the real phone number was 2753 because I did make this comment.
Can't record the busy because the number is 9953. If I dial, or anybody in this office tries to dial this payphone, they'll just end up ringing their phone, which is sort of ridiculous. However, it can be dialed from outside.
By 1974, I'd figured out the real phone number, 2753, and then in 1975, they actually posted 2753 on the phone. Now in 1976, I'm dialing from the Cabot payphone and dialing into Marshfield 426. I noticed that dialing 1, instead of going to the usual vacant level intercept with the operator, it goes somewhere else. So I dial another one, and what comes out of the phone is this.
This is a recording at Plainfield and East Calais, Vermont.
What? You can't be serious. That's a trunk to Plainfield sitting on a vacant level in Marshfield, which means that if I want to call Plainfield from Cabot, I can hop through Marshfield to get there. Plainfield is a long-distance call, but not anymore thanks to this thing. And this is not an innocent mistake like we saw in Plainfield and those Barry trunks turning up. This is deliberate. Somebody has installed what the British phone freaks called a fiddle, a deliberate change in a step office made by someone who works there so that he can, from home, dial through and get a long-distance call for free or for the price of a local call. That's a fiddle. And now I'm really stuck because if I try to stick a microphone up to the earpiece, you're not going to even be able to figure out what's going on from the tape. So it's an amazing thing and I can't record it. Now let's go to the following summer, 1977, and there is no coin phone in Cabot Village anymore. The general store removed it. I can't even make a lousy microphone recording now. But then, in the summer of 1978, a new payphone in the Cabot Exchange appeared. It was in front of the Walden Fire Station in a community called Walden Station, so named because there used to be a passenger rail station right down the road from the firehouse. Unfortunately, that railroad is now a footpath. Anyway, the Walden Station payphone, which appeared in 1978, was recordable. The telephone line, however, was a little long and very hummy. Nonetheless, for the first time in years, I was able to make a decent quality, comprehensive tape of Cabot. And my comprehensive study on Cabot, including the fiddle and what it makes possible, is in the next program.